This is interesting. واحد الكوميديان تيعجبني ضيعوا له المسيرة ديالو باش تشوفوا صاحبي شحال مقودين اعلام. حسن منهاج داروا عليه واحد الارتيكل اللي خرج عليه يا حسن، هو هذا الارتيكل هذا. مشاو تيفيريفيو البرنامج ديال واحد هذا ديالو باش تعرف كيفاش كانت الهضره هذه شهر. This is Andrew Schultz. This is Andrew Schultz. كيهضر عليه.
Some very interesting news comes up about our boy Hassan Minhaj,
I think, yeah.
How do we even know? How do we even know that that's how he pronounces the name?
I think we get to decide what the truth is.
I think that his name is 70% emotionally true, and then, but the Arnold Palmer that is his last name, the Arnold Palmer that is his last name.
صراحة أتاكا خايبة صاحبي، أتاكا خايب. سو هادو كتبوا عليه على أنه كذب الكوميدي شو اللي دار. قال سام ستوريز اللي ماشي حقيقيين. ستوري اللي قال هو أنه كان تصاحب مع شي وحدة وكان غادي يديها از لايك ديك البروم اللي كتكون عندهم في الليسي، ومهم دايرها في الشو ديالو على أساس أنه الساطا مها قالت لا ما تصوريش معاه حيت الساط سمر، حيت هو سمر وهي بيضاء لايك هذا. وما عرف كيفاش دخلها بشي طريقه فاني في القصه. ناضو كتبوا عليه كو هذاك الشيء كامل it's not true.
Critics are raising questions about Hassan Minhaj and whether he and other comedians should be more truthful with their materials. Minhaj's act often includes experiences that he says he's faced as an Asian American and Muslim American. But the comedian tells The New Yorker many of those stories either didn't happen to him or they were embellished. So joining us now is Claire Malone. She is a staff writer for The New Yorker.
هذه هي الجورناليست اللي كتبت عليه هذا الارتيكل
And actually spoke to him for this article. So you're the one that brought this to light. But bring everyone else up to speed. Why is his work sort of under scrutiny now?
Sure. I mean, just for people who don't know him, he, was a correspondent on The Daily Show and then kind of
ضيعوا له احسن جوب كان ممكن ياخذها. كان ممكن انه كان هو الاول ولا الفيرست كانديدات باش يولي بلاص داك نوا اللي كان شاد الديلي شو اللي قبل من جون ستيوارت.
got his own show
والمره ما كتبت عليه هذا الارتيكل هذا السطا هذه مشى ليه البلان.
called Patriot Act, which is part of this trend towards infotainment, right? It was called Patriot Act. It talked about social justice issues. And one of the reasons why I think this has become such a thing is that a lot of his stories were personal stories about things that are very hot button and political in America. Police entrapment, threats that have to do with his, identity. And those are really serious things. And a lot of times in his stand-up, his personal stand-up, he told these things that weren't really jokes. It was kind of storytelling. And it turns out that he made a lot of it up and said, he kept on using the phrase with me, there was an emotional truth to it.
Yes.
So,
all right. This is grosso modo هادشي اللي وقع الدراري. now اجي نشوفوا الجواب ديالو من مورا شهر، حيت هو صافي فرعاتو هاد الساطا هادي، هاد الوايت ليدي جات كتبت عليه هاد الارتيكل هذا ديسترويات الكارير ديالو. ارتيكل واحد ديسترويات الكارير ديالو. Now let's watch.
I know the news coming out of the Middle East right now feels devastating and hopeless. And I've been asked by a lot of people to give my perspective on what is happening in the region. I've also been asked, wait a second, aren't you a liar? Now, for those of you who don't know, back in September, The New Yorker ran a piece on me called Hassan Minhaj's Emotional Truths, in which a reporter fact-checked my stand-up specials and found some factual inaccuracies that they wanted to ask me about. So I sat down with them to explain my writing process and why I make certain creative choices in my stand-up. Now, when the article came out, it got picked up by almost every single news outlet, all of them basically saying the same thing. So to everyone who read that article, I want to answer the biggest question that's probably on your mind. Is Hassan Minhaj secretly a psycho? Underneath all that pomade, is Hassan Minhaj just a con artist who uses fake racism and Islamophobia to advance his career?
ودابا تفرج الصاد. He made it up because it's a fiction. Let me
Because
see.
after reading that
You gotta watch it.
article, I would also think that. So I took a beat before responding. Because like you, I've been paralyzed by the news coming out of the Middle East. And I've been processing all the criticism that has come my way. And I just want to say, to anyone who felt betrayed or hurt by my stand-up, I am sorry. I made artistic choices
عندي spoilers حيت قريت عليه.
to
قريت على
express
بلان.
myself and drive home larger issues affecting me and my community. And I feel horrible that I let people down. And the reason I feel horrible is because I'm not a psycho. But this New Yorker article definitely makes me look like one. It was so needlessly misleading. Not just about my stand-up, but also me as a person. The truth is, racism, FBI surveillance, and threats to my family happened. And I said this on the record. So I'm gonna do the most Hassan Minhaj thing ever. I'm gonna do a deep dive on my own scandal with graphics because there was so much evidence I gave the New Yorker that they ignored that I want to show you. So buckle up because it's about to get tedious. There are 3 stories from that article that I want to address. The anthrax scare, the FBI informant story, but first I want to talk about how and why I was rejected from prom. Now let me first say this. I am 38 years old with a wife and 2 kids. I do not give a shit about prom. But it's a big story from my first stand-up special, and the New Yorker implied that I made it all up and that my race wasn't a factor in my rejection. But it was, and I have the evidence to prove it. So, in Homecoming King, I told a story about how I was supposed to go to prom with a white girl named Bethany Reed. Her real name is not Bethany. I changed it to protect her anonymity. I say that I show up at Bethany's house on prom night, but at the doorstep, her mom tells me they don't want her to go to prom with me because they'll be taking a lot of pictures and they don't want their family back home to see her with a brown boy. Bethany's mom did really say that. It was just a few days before prom. And I created the doorstep scene to drop the audience into the feeling of that moment, which I told the reporter.
Is the doorstep moment true? Like, did that happen?
No. It happened before. But the emotional truth remains the same. Her mom going, "Hey, sweetie, we take photos and we don't want people to see. We have family back home."
Did she sort of give that as the reason of like, my parents aren't comfortable with going to,
Yes.
Yeah.
And it just destroyed me.
Yeah. Sure. That's understandable.
The reporter said it's understandable. But none of what I explicitly
هذا اللي كتهضر هي هاد الساطة هادي. هي هادي.
said makes it in the article. This is what they wrote instead.
She told me that she turned down Minhaj, who was then a close friend, in person days before the dance. Minhaj acknowledged that this was correct, but he said that the 2 of them had long carried different understandings of her rejection.
This whole paragraph makes it sound like I got friend-zoned by Bethany, and then I turned into an angry incel, and then faked racism to get back at her. And I think this sentence is the reason why people believe that. He said that the 2 of them had long carried different understandings of her rejection. This sentence is incredibly misleading and implies the exact opposite of what I meant. Let me explain. Okay. Over a decade after prom, in August of 2014, Bethany and I met at a restaurant called Sarah Betts in New York, and we cleared the air on what her mom said to me at prom. Now, I talk about this in Homecoming King, and I also told the New Yorker about this meetup.
She had an understanding that we were like totally cool. And like I had been carrying something completely different. And I just told her what it meant. Like, it's like, do you understand what it's like being a skinny Muslim Desi brown kid in Davis, California? And, you know, we're always told to put our head down and just take it. And I did. And I carried this water for like years and years.
When the article says we had different understandings, what I clearly meant was that Bethany never knew how much her family being racist had affected me. That's why we had different understandings. Not because Bethany denied this happened. In fact, Bethany basically confirmed in writing that racism was a factor in the prom rejection. In 2015, I sent Bethany an email congratulating her on her wedding to a man of color, saying, "I know I told you about sharing the story about us not being able to go to prom together with kids and communities to talk about forgiveness and perseverance. But this ending, you guys getting married, is proof that love conquers all. It's a testament to the way the world truly can be. Wishing you guys the absolute best, And here's to a life filled with gorgeous Zayn Malik mixed-race babies. Yep, I'm aware. I write emails the way Lin-Manuel Miranda talks. I'm not proud of it, but let's stay focused. Bethany then replied saying, I do think love conquers all. And while it might always be challenging, true love is worth the fight. We also had the unique opportunity to showcase both our cultures at the wedding, with a ceremony for each. I think my parents have come a long way too. And what would her parents have to come a long way from? Racism. Again, I don't care about prom. I mean that. And Bethany didn't do anything wrong. And I wish her and her family nothing but the best. Her parents have grown. My parents have grown. That's the point of the whole show. And that should be celebrated. Love conquers all. But I do not appreciate the New Yorker implying that I made up racism. My team and I repeatedly try to give them the emails that you just saw.
As early as, I believe fall 2014.
I have these if you want.
Yeah, and then we have email correspondence in 2017, which we can give you.
Okay.
Then I now shift to email correspondence, which she can give you.
I have it. I can send it.
Yeah. So and happy to give you all these emails.
Sure.
Not only that, we confirmed the emails were sent to the reporter and their fact checker before the article came out. Therefore, they knew my rejection was due to race. I confirmed it on the record and provided.
شي كيفاش كيقلبوا عليك الهضره ديالك اصاحبي صافا عليه سجل الهضره كون ما سجلهاش كون تفرع اش كيسجل الهضره اصاحبي هادشي اللي خاصك دير فوق ما تتلاقى مع شي صحافي
provided corroborating evidence, and yet they misled readers by excluding all of that and splicing two different quotes together to leave you thinking that I made up a racist incident. Now, the article also implies that I humiliated Bethany and got her doxxed with my carelessness, so I want to show you evidence that shows that that isn't true. Back in November of 2015, when Homecoming King was running off Broadway, Bethany came to the show, and this is how The New Yorker reported it.
The woman said that Minhaj had invited her and her husband to an off-Broadway performance. She'd initially interpreted the invitation as an attempt to rekindle an old friendship, but she now believes the move was meant to humiliate her.
I promise it was never my intention to humiliate Bethany at the show, but this reporting is false. I looked back at our emails and I found out that I didn't invite Bethany to that show. She emailed me out of the blue and told me that she was coming because her friends saw the show and said they loved it. After the show, Bethany also texted me that it was awesome and we kept in touch for years. I included her in the journey with full transparency. I put her in touch with fact checkers from This American Life. I invited her to the Netflix premiere party. I even emailed her to take down a tweet that might reveal her identity. Bethany then responded with a really nice email that ended with her saying, P.S. Thanks for the heads up on the tweet. I deleted the other ones, but this one escaped me. It's shockingly hard to resurface old social media, apparently. Thanks, too, for always protecting me and my family. I don't think I've ever formally thanked you for that, and I do sincerely appreciate it. Even in the Netflix...
ماشي غير دوسي عنده 16 عام مي ليتشرلي تيبدلوا له الهضره ديالو كيقولها قدامها تيقول لها شي هضره للصحفيه كتكتب هضره اخرى.
Special. I don't use any real photos of Bethany or her family. Those are actors, and their faces are blurred. Maintaining Bethany's anonymity has always been a priority for me. I would never...
And it's... Yeah, وهادشي كامل it's a fucking joke أصاحبي.
Ever want her to get doxxed
It's a comedy story.
or harassed. And if there were any negative consequences that came your way, Bethany, I am sorry about that. I am not perfect, but I promise I am not needlessly cruel, even though that's what the New Yorker wants you to believe, despite the evidence. But here's the bigger question. Why did the New Yorker fact-check my stand-up special, but not properly fact-check their own article? If you're still here, I have two more stories that I want to address. Now, in my second special, The King's Jester, I tell a story about how I met and was harassed by an FBI informant named Brother Eric. I talk about how he tried to entrap me at a gym, and when I made fun of him, he slammed me against the hood of a cop car. The truth is, I did have altercations with undercover law enforcement growing up, and that experience formed the basis of this story. But it didn't go down exactly like this. So I understand why people are upset. People face real danger at the hands of the police, and false stories can undermine real stories. And I am sorry I added to that problem. My intention wasn't to take away from these stories. It was to spotlight them through my special. That's why I used this story to talk about Hamid Hayat. Hamid and I were part of the same NorCal Muslim community. When he got entrapped, it rocked our community, and he spent 14 years in prison. We were the same age, same background, and like him, I also had run-ins with undercover agents. I was even physically harassed by them while playing basketball. Now you're probably wondering, why not just say that? So this is not an excuse. It is an explanation of my process. When I am storytelling, every beat has to do multiple things in a funny and impactful way. With the story, I had to set up 3 plot points. The moment I realized authority figures hate being made fun of, why I named my show Patriot Act, and spotlight the story of Hamid Hayat. The problem is 99% of people watching Netflix have no idea the FBI spied on Muslims at mosques, or they don't even believe it was real. And I know this because when I performed earlier versions of the story in front of audiences, they had no idea what I was talking about. FBI agents embedding in mosques and entrapping young Muslims through basketball or weightlifting or whatever. It sounds insane. But it was happening all over the country, even in my mosque in my hometown. It was infiltrated. And the footage that I used in the special proves that it was very real and very stupid. I wanted to recreate that feeling that only Muslims felt for a broad audience, the feeling of paranoia and vindication, tension and release. That is why people laugh at this part. You don't get the release without the tension. That was my artistic intent, which I told the New Yorker. If you notice something about, even in the show, we pop out of it, and this is actually the point I was trying to make. My dad goes, "That's not Brother Eric. His name is not Eric. His name is Craig." And the moment that the reaction the audience is having is, "Nudge me, you're missing the point."
Yeah.
The point is that it doesn't matter if his name was Eric, Craig, or Adam. The point is that there is now a pattern here at large.
Sure.
And that was the thing that I was trying to do. And ultimately, the emotional truth of trying to point a spotlight on my community story and Hamid's story is important to me. Hamid Hayat's story is really important to me. And he reached out to me after the article came out. And he wanted me to share these texts. He said that he had nothing but love for me and that I hadn't diminished his story. That's what I was trying to do. But the reporter was far more concerned about the FBI informant I talked about in the special, which honestly felt very...
دخلوه 14 عام صاحبي للحبس هذاك صاحبي ذاك الصوت اللي كعرف كانوا كيصيفطوا صاحبي الانفورمانتس يدخلوا معاهم في الجوامع باش يصيدوهم على اي حاجه كيقولوها ما حيت هو خدم جزء من الستوري ديال داك الساط مع شي حوايج اللي وقعوا له في الماضي ديالو باش يعاود الستوري ديال هاد السيد هذا قال لك لا علاش يكذب في الكوميدي بحال دابا لوي سيكي فاش كيهضر على داك البيدوفيل اللي ما بغاش يغتصب اللي عنده واحد اللعيبه راه بصح غيمشيو يقلبوا واش فريمون كان شي بيدوفيل باغي يغتصب لوي سيكي وشو دابا البلان ناري يا صاحبي
very weird.
In the story about the informant, actually the bulk of the story is about Craig Monty. Like
Sure.
so did you reach out to Craig Monty?
No.
Do you feel like you owe him anything?
I've heard some things and I'd rather not speak on that.
So you feel like you didn't owe him like a heads up?
As a Muslim, am I supposed to apologize to an ex-con who tried to entrap Muslims for the FBI? Yeah, maybe if he gave us a heads up, I would owe him a heads up. Now, the last story I want to talk about is the
Yeah, she's like more concerned بداك الاف بي اي ايجنت اللي كان كيدخل المسلمين هذا بشي حوايج اللي لا علاقه انترابيهم.
anthrax scare. My last special, I talk about how I received a letter in the mail, and when I opened the letter, white powder fell on my daughter, and we had to take her to the hospital only to find out it was not real anthrax. This, as you know, is not how it went down. And let me just say, I am sorry for embellishing the story, or if anyone was worrying about me and my family, I apologize. But let me make something clear. A letter with white powder was sent to my apartment in February of 2019. I opened it in the kitchen, powder fell on the table, and my daughter was just a few feet away. After 10 seconds of freaking out, I realized it was not anthrax and that someone was fucking with me because people had been fucking with me since January 1st, 2019 after this happened.
Well, Netflix under fire today after its decision to pull an episode of a comedy show that was critical of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman.
The truth is, When this news broke, my life got very scary. Saudi bots were spamming my socials. A threatening letter was sent to Netflix. I was getting weird phone calls at night. Then fake anthrax was sent to my house. And after that happened, I asked Netflix for our security guard to follow me everywhere, and people noticed. Friends were texting me about seeing me rolling everywhere through New York with security. And at one point, my wife even asked our security detail if he knew any companies that sold those tiny GPS trackers for strollers, because we were concerned that someone might try to kidnap or hurt our daughter. That is all real. The danger at that time was palpable, but Bina and I decided to keep the anthrax scare private because we were worried that Netflix might shut down my show, which would have put my entire staff out of work. Now you might be wondering, this is all terrifying, so why embellish? Why even say you took your daughter to the hospital? The night of the anthrax scare, Bina and I, we got into a huge argument, and she kept asking, Hassan, what if this powder fell on our daughter? So I created the hospital scene to put the audience in that same shock and fear that me and Bina felt playing out that night. Then I added the investigator character because women in my life were telling me that Bina was coming off super naggy in old versions of the story. So I gave some of Bina's lines to other characters so that her perspective was represented in a way that didn't reflect poorly on her. Again, I am sorry if I crossed a line here, but I told this story this way to put the audience on the roller coaster ride that we were both experiencing at that time. Now look, I understand why people were upset by all of this. Different comedians.
كون داروا هاد الشيء مع الاخبار ديال بصح مع البلانات ديال فلسطين واسرائيل كون كاع ما وصلناش لهاد المشاكل ديال الفيك نيوز اللي واصله. ليترالي دايرين معاه بحال كاتب كتاب على التاريخ اللي ما قراونا، ما عارف نو لايك تاريخ امريكا، شي حاجه اللي ما خاصش يزقل فيها. صدير كوميدي شو مبازي على شي حوايج من حياته.
Have different expectations built into their personas. I thought I had two different
And because of that he lost his job, داك الجوب اللي كان غادي يدبر عليها.
Expectations built into my work. My work as a storytelling comedian and my work as a political comedian, where facts always come first. That is why the fact-checking on Patriot Act was extremely rigorous. The fact-checking in my congressional testimony, deeply rigorous. I don't think there's any comedian on earth who has stood in front of more data viz than me. But in my work as a storytelling comedian, I assumed that the lines between truth and fiction were allowed to be a bit more blurry. And I totally get why a journalist would be interested where that line sits. I just wish the reporter had been more interested in their own premise. Someone genuinely curious about truth and stand-up wouldn't just fact-check my specials. They would fact-check a bunch of specials. They would establish a control group, a baseline, to see how far outside the bounds I was in relation to others. And they wouldn't just cherry-pick a few stories. They would give their readers a sense of proportionality of what was true versus what was false. In my last special, I talk about almost getting sued by a hedge fund, 100% true. Getting ball surgery so we could have kids, 100% true. Netflix pulling my episode on Saudi and Saudi, 100% true. Getting rejected from prom because of my race, 1000% true. If the reporter were genuinely curious about the idea of truth and stand-up, they would have had to report that the majority of my stories are true. But their article led with the opposite, saying much of my stand-up never happened to me. That is false. Nearly all of it happened to me. Some of it didn't. Even the last line of the article is stripped of the context to leave you with the impression that I'm some sort of unrepentant liar. He told me the emotional truth is first, the factual truth is secondary. We tried really hard to have them put in the full quote with full context, but they refused. So let me leave you with the full context.
When people see a Hassan Minhaj show, there's two different expectations. There's the Hassan Minhaj you see maybe here at the Comedy Cellar, where there is an implicit agreement between the audience, like we're going down into a basement, like we're about to see a 1-hour comedy show that feels like there is an emotional roller coaster ride.
Sure.
Then there's Hassan Minhaj, the guy you've seen on The Daily Show as a correspondent, or the guy from Patriot Act on Netflix, which is, I am not the primary character. The news story is the primary character. With the latter, the truth comes first. Comedy sometimes comes second to make the infotainment the sugar on the medicine. In this, the emotional truth is first. The factual truth is secondary.
دايما صاحبي هولي شيت فاش كتاخد ديك ويلو للمصلين ليترالي قال لها فاش كندير داك الشو ديالي الاخر فاش كيكون البلان ديال تيهضر على شي موضوع شي لعيبه شي ستون شي حاجه فلسطين اسرائيل ما كيكذبش خصو يكون فاكتشوال واخا يكون تيدخل النكات ولكن داكشي اللي كيهضر عليه اتس ترو وهادشي اللي واقع ديال ان داير كوميدي شو في الكوميدي سيلر في البيسمنت كتهبط لتحت وتمشي تتفرج تماك التروث ماشي مهمه اكثر من انك تضحك بنادم to a certain extent ولا انك توصل له واحد الاحساس ولا I think شولتز وصحابو عندهم ديجا شي مشكل معاه ولا شي بلان دخلوا فيه واحد دخله مقوده بامكا welcome back الصاد how are you doing when I watched the flagrant episode I thought he said that story of show like in a podcast or something but fact check in a comedy show ثم فهمت انا كيفاش ما تضامنوش معاه هذوك داك النهار ركبوا على المجركبه مقوده اندرو شولتز والبلان باش تبان لك ان هادشي حقيقي الاخر تيقول له داك الهندي الاخر لا شولتز ماشي تجوج داك الهندي تيقول له راه عاود ليا هاد الستوري هادي 15 عام وهادي تعطيك الخبر على انه ماشي كذوب قال له دونك كذب عليا هادي 15 عام.
In political comedy, facts come first. In comedic storytelling, emotions come first. That is what I said, and that is what I meant. Going forward, will I be more thoughtful about sticking to the facts in my storytelling? Absolutely. I have no problem with honest, good faith critique because I am always trying to improve as a performer and as a person. Look, the guy in this article is a proper fucking psycho. But I now hope you feel like the real me is not. I'm just a guy with IBS and low sperm motility. Again, there is much more important news happening in the world right now that needs your attention. So I appreciate you watching. I take the note, and I hope to see you at the next show.
Damn. الفيديو ما تفرجوش فيها صاحبي بزاف 600,000 صاحبي بينما الفيديو الاول الاصلي ديالها فاش تدار عليه هاد البلانات هادو
made a lot of it up and said he kept on using the phrase with me there was an emotional truth to it.
Yes.
So, you know,
kept using ناري هاد الوايت ويمن الدراري كيخلعوني يا صاحبي
and I think what he means by
طيح عليك الباطل وكيبان عليهم صاحبي الحق سيرتو في هاد البلدان هاد
that is he's right. People after 9/11 who are Muslim did feel a sense of danger.
It's not even an apology video. The guy like من حقه يدير داكشي he shouldn't apologize.
But again, like things didn't happen to him and his rationale is, well, they happen to people and I'm just sort of bringing those stories to the fore.
You know, we
Shit, man. You all owe him an apology. Gosh. خاص الآخر يهضر صراحة. خاص هاد أندرو شولتز يعتذر على هاد البلانات هادو اللي دار معاه.
What a weekend for theatrical comedians. Some very interesting news comes up about our boy Hassan Minhaj.
Minhaj, I think, yeah.
How do we even know? How do we even know that that's how he pronounces the name?
I think we get to decide what the truth is.
I think that his name is 70% emotionally true, and then, but the Arnold Palmer
شي كيفاش ركبوا عليه صعيب.
that is his last name. The Arnold Palmer that is his last name, we're not exactly certain on, so I think it's something you just flow with. You go with.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The actually annoying thing about Hassan, you're gonna get these fucking.
بلي كان كارهو من قبل الصاد. I think كان كارهو بحال شويه حقود فهمتي. حقود.
It's always been nice to me, but you deserve this. But the crazy thing about the whole situation with him, you know, lying in his specials or about the stories in his specials is that, like, if you know his real life, he has these insane things that have happened to him. And it was him and a tiger on a boat, and they forged this real friendship.
That's crazy because that
and
all
why
makes
not tell
sense.
that story?
Dude, that makes perfect
tell
sense.
That story.
That makes perfect sense because the tiger, before he came here, I know he grew up in a jungle.
هادو ولاد الدراري هادو بلانش اصاحبي يا ات ذا تايم صراحه خريت بالضحك ولكن ولاد
Like a bunch of animals raised him like he knew how to
نشوف شنو كتبين له الشاط. Now you guys stupid idiots. Akasha hater. ناري كي كيتقلب اصاحبي البلان after all the receipts came out. شي كيفاش بنادم شو اصاحبي كيفاش دغيا كيتقلب شي كيفاش بنادم تيكتب يكس looks back at this awkward now. This didn't age well. Well, this aged poorly. Watch Hassan response and clear his name. إلا مشيتي للتوب comments. Lion, LeBron, yes. I feel that friend of his hurts. Always keep receipts. هذا هو البلان.
speak to them. It was
ولكن الصاد البلان هو هذا. Check this out. Claire Melon هذه هي الصحفية. Hassan Minaj confirms in this video that he selectively presents information and embellishes it to make a point. شو ولاد كيفاش مازال شاده في الهضره ديالها. قالت له مرة في الفيديو ديالو كيأكد على انه selectively presents information to embellish to make a point. Exactly what we reported. Our piece, which includes Minhaj perspective at length, was carefully reported and fact-checked. It is based on interviews with more than 20 people, including former Patriot Acts and Daily Show staffers, members of Minhaj's security team, and people who have been the subjects of his stand, including the former FBI informant's brother Eric, and the woman at the center of his program. We stand by our story. شو هاد literally بدلات في الهضره ديالو وقطعات منه باش يبان براه كذاب. Gosh, how can you stand by this? ناري كلشي كيسبها صاحبي. You ended up doing the same thing he does in his special. You changed what actually happened. Release the full recordings. Hi, I would like to file a report. And yeah, stand up صراحة حاجة أخرى. Holy shit, dude, that's like fucking insane. كلشي تيسبها صاحبي. I actually did believe the article, so I'm getting some whiplash from watching Hassan Minaj's response. Honestly, the interference that makes Hassan Minaj on the... Yeah, البلان أنا I think هادشي كامل بحال ال FBI من مورا هاد البلان هذا. هادشي كامل مدفوعة باش تبين حيت هي مكونسونطري على داك البلان ديال ال FBI وباغات بحال تبرر ولا قلت له علاش ما عيطتيش لل FBI وعلاش ما عيطتيش لهداك الساط اللي كان كيدخل الناس لحبس زورا وعدوانا. من شي destroyed صاحبي his career. والله السيد صاحبي كان هو اللي غادي ياخد البلان ديال الديلي شو. فرعاتو صاحبي والله حتى فرعاتو.